my next question here for everyone. While it's true that genius cannot be taught, there's no question that creativity can be nurtured or squelched in schools. And creativity has never been more in demand in our real-time global marketplace, whether solving multivariable engineering problems, pushing the boundaries of the visual arts, or dreaming up the next killer app. How do you propose to implement the core K-12 curriculum arts education requirements in such a way that they engage the creativity that lies ready to be unleashed in every child? And we'll go back to the order we just had. So first up, Stephen.
Thank you. I guess everybody knows who I am too.
You're the first one voted off the aisle.
Thank you. I really believe this. I've been talking about a full-service comprehensive school as part of my education program. And this is really where the core of the neighborhood, the core of the community is the school, but it becomes full service by collaborating with those services around the classroom, because we have to extend the classroom. That is the key. The education starts from the kitchen table and ends when the child goes to bed at night. The key, obviously, in maintaining that arts and music remain part of the curriculum has to do with the fact, and it's always the case, whenever there's a reduction, the first programs that get cut are always arts and music. And that actually does one of two things. It minimizes the role and the impressions that school departments have about arts and music, or do they do it because they know that's what's going to get the greatest kind of pullback and say you've got to restore it and it's almost a game. That has to stop. And in my administration, I will tell you that arts and music will be a priority in the education curriculum, and it's not going to be the first attack on the curriculum. That is the key. It has to be made a priority, and simply saying the words, and this is what I'm saying the words creative isn't enough. You have to stand behind it and make sure that your school committee and your administrators feel as strongly about it as being as part of the curriculum as we do. And that's how you do it, and you make sure that that's how it is during the budget process.
One question, which is, I think, having seen it in so many different places, it's the first place they attack because school districts are being judged on test scores, and the test scores that matter to the world at large don't seem to include the arts.
And that's true, and I think the new race to the top, when they're talking about evaluations, it's a key point where I believe the arts community needs to engage themselves on how the race to the top evaluates schools. They should be part of that evaluation, and it should be critical that that issue is dealt with in that evaluation process.
Okay, well then, so that my question is, if you're not going to allow the arts to be the first attack, what will be?
Well, I think the key there is, it's simply to say that what will be the first attack. I think how you deal with education in terms of reductions. I passed the funding formula at the state house. It's going to mean another $30 million for the city of Providence. That's the opportunity we now have on reinvesting our money and where it should go. I mean, always in the times of these reductions, I always say, have you looked at the rest of the budget, the rest of the city budget, before you go to the core investment, and that's our kids? And I would say, instead of arts and music versus math and science, it should be education versus the rest of the city budget, and can you do consolidations and the type of things you need to do in city budgets to preserve the funding in the education department. Unlike other cities and towns, we don't have an elected school committee. We don't have this functional department that's battling for the dollar. In terms of, it is really an arm of the city, and that's how we have to treat it. So it should be, let's go to the other side of the budget, getting the other side of the budget in check, balancing that budget, rather than immediately going to the school department and art and music to balance your city budget. That is what is wrong with the budget process.
I mean, the idea that we're cutting arts, part of what's going on in terms of the state overall is that we've had less and less funding from the state, just including a $5.3 million, I think it was, just this year in terms of school funding from the state. So part of that is when you pass it on to the cities and towns, that's part of what happens, Chairman. And with respect to this, I think one of the most important things that you mentioned, Mike, in your question is that corporate leaders, 96% of the corporate leaders say that creativity is important to the existing workforce. And that's something we need to make clear to everyone, how important creativity is. For me, as I mentioned earlier in terms of my opening response with respect to our plan for arts and culture in our city, we have to restore arts education. And of course, the question is money. Well, we have amazing nonprofits, not only our institutions, but the Philharmonic that's here. We have artists that are here. We should use and work together to help restore arts in our schools. I've met philanthropists who want to restore arts in the schools and say they want to be involved in doing that. And I plan on making sure that they're involved in doing that. I also think that we have to take advantage of the programs like the Urban Arts. I was a founding board member of Project. It was Project the Urban Arts when I was involved. That's important as well, so that our kids have an opportunity both inside and outside of school, to really develop creatively. And that's something that I'm going to do as mayor. What it is really having an appreciation for it, understanding it's a priority, and then having your actions reflect your priorities. That, I think, is the most important thing that the mayor has to do, and that's what I will do. And I expect that you're going to hold me accountable.
So you were saying that there were two things. Number one is to get practicing professionals into the schools, to encourage, to teach, to mentor the children in the schools. And secondly, to engage the private philanthropic community in the public schools.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, both of those things.
Yes.
Do you have an example of where that works now, or how it works?
Well, I know that in Georgia, for example, we have districts in Georgia, and this is from a meeting that I had recently, where they have a much more of an emphasis on the arts. I'm sure that we can make it work in the city of Providence. We're a small enough city, and the truth of the matter is, between everyone even sitting at this table, we pretty much can reach out to different people. And we have to take advantage of the fact of the size. If they can do and have great arts education in Georgia, and they can do it in other places, we can do it here. And I'm sure that we can. So.
Okay, I have to be perfectly honest though. Kevin McKenna was the person who came up with the light rail system in 2002. He's running for Attorney General when he ran for Mayor of Providence. So, in any event, Mr. Costantino says that it starts at the kitchen table and then it goes until that child goes to sleep at night. But it must be hard for Mr. Costantino to go to sleep at night since he didn't stand for Victor Moffitt and my legislation to stop schools from being built on dump sites. It doesn't get kids to want to be creative when they build their schools on toxic sites like the former Adelaide Avenue School, where the ground soil is 400% higher in levels of arsenic. And then the Pleasant View School, 9 teachers have cancer there. 1 teacher died of cancer. That can't help kids want to go to school and learn about the arts. But obviously the cutting of the arts programs from classical high school was overseen by Mr. Costantino, who sat on the House Finance Committee when the City of Providence came before him for school funding for Providence, but he didn't say anything about them cutting the arts programs out of Providence. Obviously, what really needs to be done is that this race to the top money that they're talking about, it's a pittance. It's $33 million per year. It's really not. It's a small amount of money, whatever the amount amounts to. It's a pittance in comparison to the state school funding formula, and it restricts what teachers get to teach and what parents have to say about what teachers have to teach. So this is going to hurt creativity. I want to create an online university called the University of Providence where kids can go to college for free. That'll incentivize kids to go to school. The Open Doors Project, which is a nonprofit like Mr. Tavares is talking about, well, they're going to stick inmates in a local residential neighborhood in Silver Lake, and there'll be a bunch of triggers for them to for recidivism in those neighborhoods with a liquor store and little kids close by. And one of the crimes that these people perpetrated are like pornography, stealing cars, I mean, all these things. And he's talking about giving all the money to the nonprofits, because he's connected with a whole bunch of nonprofits that want to steal a lot of money from the state of Rhode Island.